What is up, everybody? We are rolling out of here today on yet another edition of the Hodder Show Rewind, a special edition of the Hodder Show in which we take a look back, a rewind at some of the previous episodes of the show from over the last 5 years. And today we're doing something very special and different because we're going back to about 2 years ago when I did an episode where I read some paranormal and horror / creepypasta type stories from real Reddit users. Now, this is really fun and timely for me because actually this past week, for the first time, I started randomly posting stories that I had written, fictional stories that I had written on Reddit, on the No Sleep Reddit, and scary short stories and things of that nature. And they've gotten some really good feedback, which kind of surprised me. I have something in the works that I've been working on for a little bit now, and this was kind of almost like phase one of my plan to slowly start this development process. I'm not going to say anything else about that, but if you are into the, reading the Reddit horror stories and the No Sleep Reddit and things of that nature, you might see a story on there. And, well, the one is called It's Always Watching Me, and the other one is called I'm Trapped in an Elevator and That Thing is Still Out There. If for some reason you read either of those stories for some reason, hi. That was your boy. But either way, if you would like to maybe check out those stories, hit me up. I'll send them over to you. Especially if you are listening to this podcast, you may be into that kind of thing. But this was really fun for me to look back on and listen to because it was kind of the start of my random fascination with kind of the Reddit horror community. And from this episode, it really started to take off, and it's taken a long time to kind of finally pull a trigger on me posting some stuff I'd written. But it's just fun, and I do love the paranormal horror stuff. It's not my main bread and butter here on the Hodder Show, as I do, of course, mainly do interviews and things like that. But considering that, unfortunately, I am in a bit of a weird situation right now, as my computer has decided to fry itself again, I'm hoping that I'll be able to fix it this weekend and we can get back to the normal type of content here on the Hodder Show. But I figured in the meantime, let's do something different. Last week, of course, we had the Family Guy Fan Theories with John Ward of Nothing Serious. So I figured this is kind of a fun, timely thing with what I've been doing this week. Let's do it. So I hope that you guys enjoy it. Thank you so very much for all the support and for still checking these out. I know that for some of you, you may have heard this before. This might be recycled content in some way, I guess you could look at. But those of you who did not hear it, I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed listening back on this podcast. And I enjoyed doing this podcast a couple of years ago when I did do it. So now, without further ado, let's go back in time. So before we start reading these stories off here, I feel that I should stress something. And that is the fact that on record, if you guys have never listened to my podcast before, first, thank you for listening and tuning in. Hopefully that subscribe button, all that fun stuff. I am a firm believer in ghosts and in spirits. Whether they are malevolent or they are peaceful, doesn't matter. I do fully believe in them. There have been things that have happened, like I mentioned in the intro, that have happened to me in my life that I can't explain any other way. So I'm a firm believer of that. That's why doing something like this for me, I think, is interesting. However, I will stress something else. I explain it that I have a very overactive imagination. Coming from an adult, that might sound a little weird. Basically, to sum it up to you like this, I tend to, my brain more so, tends to make up scenarios in my head, tends to show me things that aren't there sometimes, or hear things that aren't there sometimes, things of that nature. And it really leads to some pretty ridiculous moments in my life, where I'll basically scare myself when there's nothing going on. It does happen a lot. So I don't like horror movies. I find that while I'm watching the horror movie, I'm not enjoying it. I don't find them like very interesting. And then, I'll be like walking down my hall, for God's sakes, in the middle of the night, and it's pitch black. And next thing you know, I like feel something or see something. It's silly. It's really silly. And I get made fun of a lot for it. My fiance just rips on me all the time for it, but that's just me. And it sucks and it's unfortunate. But that's why doing things like this is really interesting, because you may notice during this podcast, if the stories are freaky enough, I will get scared. I mean, for God's sakes, even just walking to my car in the pitch black, coming home from work tonight, okay, I got a little scared. I don't know why. I was like, oh my God, something watching me. Oh my God, what's that? Maybe there was something watching me. It's probably like a freaking squirrel or something. Or, well, a squirrel wouldn't be at this time of night. I don't know. Maybe there's a raccoon. Maybe there's a raccoon watching me. He's just like, man, where's he going? Why is he so scared, bruh? I don't know. But, because it is late at night, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to scare myself. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to read these stories off to you. Now, it's up for interpretation sometime with stories like this, because some of them I don't really think are going to be that scary, just skimming through them. Some of them I think are almost more than anything kind of nice in a way, but it's people sharing their experience with ghosts and spirits. So we'll see. I'm going to kind of read them, try my best to do it in kind of a narrator type voice. It's going to be still me, obviously. Some people have said that they like when I do that kind of a voice when I'm reading stuff like this. So I'm going to do that anyway. And we'll just kind of see what we think, So strap in. Hope that you guys enjoy this. Let's check out some of these stories here. So the first one we have is from Reddit user Huey M. That's Huey M. We start off reading these stories here with one that I kind of think is a little more heartwarming than anything. And it is from Reddit user Huey M. My stepmom and my dad used to work opposite shifts there for a while. He was on nights, her on days. They had a set of baby monitors from when my sister and I were babies. My dad said they could record short messages on them, and they would leave them out on the coffee table for the other to hear when they got home from their shift. This went on for a bit. Then once their shifts lined up, they put the monitors in the storage. She died of cancer at a really young age, and my dad had just gotten back from the funeral and was home alone. He spent that night going through her things, packing some of her stuff away. He said he had one of the baby monitors sitting on the coffee table, and it woke him up in the middle of the night with an old message going off on repeat that she had recorded. It said, "I love you, Mike. I love you, Mike." Over and over. My dad told me that he just sat on the couch in the dark and listened to her message until the batteries died. A couple of weeks later, he had picked us up for the weekend. After my sister and I went inside, he said he was sitting on the porch smoking, and a strong gust of wind. He could smell her perfume that she always wore. It scared me hearing those stories as a kid, but now I can see the beauty and peace in those experiences. And that's a prime example of how sometimes an encounter with a ghost or a spirit can be a positive one. And I think that is definitely a beautiful story in its own right. Me reading it in kind of the more, toned down kind of voice was maybe a little silly, but I said I was going to do it, so I'm going to do it. And it's, kind of a beautiful story. And I really feel like the best way to start this off. Something nice before we get into kind of the more, darker nitty gritty stuff. Because this next one here that we have, actually the account was deleted. This one I actually found on a website that was kind of secondhand. I kind of found these stories all over the place, so just kind of bear with me if some of the account names are deleted. Credit goes, of course, officially to whoever is telling this tale. I wish I could, figure out who you are or whatever, so I could give you credit for the story, because I'm not one to take someone's story without giving them credit, but unfortunately, there's no way I could know this. This was posted 2 years ago, though, so take that with what you will. And this one is definitely a darker story, for sure. My grandfather was a bad man. Alcoholic, extremely violent. Tried to kill my grandmother in front of their kids. One of his less horrible acts was abandoning my grandmother with their 6 kids, all under the age of 12. Some of the kids maintained minimal contact with him. He lived about 30 or 40 miles from my grandmother and the 2 kids who'd stayed in the area. When he was in his 80s, he was hospitalized and then passed away in the middle of the night. In the morning, his oldest child, one of my aunts, went to the morgue to identify the body and fill out the paperwork. On her way, she stopped by my grandmother's to break the news. When she came in, my grandmother said, "Oh, it's a sad day. He died just past midnight, I imagine." My grandmother had begun to show signs of dementia or just basic old age, and so the weird comments weren't too out of character. My aunt had assumed that either the hospital or one of her siblings had already called her to tell their mother the news. My aunt shook it off and drove to the morgue. When she saw the death certificate, she was shocked to see the time of death listed as 12:10 a.m. On her way home, she stopped back at my grandmother's and asked her who had called her to tell her the news, and asked why she said she thought he died just past midnight. My grandmother said, "He came to see me at 12:30, and we talked for a spell. He wanted to apologize for all he'd done to me and you kids. I think he made his peace and was able to move on. I'm so glad for that." My grandmother then resumed humming and doing a jigsaw puzzle. So that is definitely a more interesting story, if you will, because having a, seems like kind of a not so great person passing away, and then I guess in a way finding peace, maybe in death. Maybe this was something that haunted him his whole life. I mean, I'm sure it did. I can pretty much guarantee you it did. A lot of people who, are, kind of pieces of crap in life, when they are on their deathbed, or they get to an older age and their health is failing them and they're faced with their own mortality, tend to realize, the wrongdoings of their life. And most people want to try and make up for it. So it's, it's tricky when you have a spirit like that. And those are the kind of spirits that can almost be kind of that aggressive, angry, malevolent spirit, where they have unfinished business. So it's good that he was able to find peace and move on from this plane of existence to whatever lies beyond, which we're of course not going to get into today. So the next one I have, actually the next couple I have, they're short, but again, definitely some interesting ones for sure. And it's kind of a quick tale, and that's what I thought was interesting, about a object that is attached to someone when they pass away. And this tale is from Reddit user the True Lord Humongous. Not so much creepy, but kind of cool. My mother split and transplanted a rose bush from my grandfather's farm about 40 years ago. It took, but never bloomed. At that point, she only kept it because it grew into the fence nicely and kept us kids from climbing it. My grandfather died about 5 years after she transplanted it. And that spring, it bloomed red roses. A few years after that, my grandmother died. In that spring, after it bloomed white roses. These are the only 2 years it has ever bloomed. So when you have an object that they are attached to, that is why you hear stories about someone, maybe buying an old rocking chair or, an old guitar or even a TV, a doll perhaps, that are, quote unquote, haunted. I do fully believe that can happen if someone, is attached to an item and they, spend a lot of time with it, they can become attached to it. So when this person's, mother transplanted that plant, I'm sure that they spent a lot of time on that plant. Maybe it was a plant that never quite bloomed. They spent time on it, but it finally did. Whatever the reason, they are attached to that plant. So I do firmly believe that this can happen and probably did happen. I'm sure there's a lot of truth in that, and I'm sure that, it seems like kind of a silly thing to lie about for sure. And, it can happen. I do firmly believe that. I know that I've had, just a quick segue story here. When I was at gigs, I had a woman bring in a guitar that she wanted fixed up and that she was going to give to her grandson. That was her husband's guitar, and he had just actually passed away. And she said that, he used to play it for probably 30, 40 years. And then his arthritis in his hands got so bad he could barely move his fingers. So he had to stop playing. So she figured that, it was kind of a nice sentiment to fix the guitar up and give it to the grandson, because he always had hoped he would play. So while I was fixing up this guitar, a lot of interesting things happened that day. I again stress that, the place I worked at was haunted. And if you have not heard me tell those stories, I do strongly implore you to go back to the Ghost of Gigs music and listen to that if you've been enjoying this. And, I do firmly believe that maybe for this particular story, maybe there was a coincidence, but I don't think so. I had these strings on the guitar, some new strings, and I walked over to the other side of the store to get something. And all of a sudden, the guitar just strummed. And I was like, okay, someone just strummed that guitar, and it wasn't me. No one else was in the building. So I like to believe that was this gentleman maybe giving a little tip of the hat, if you will, to that. So I like to think that it can be a positive thing, not so much a negative thing when something like that happens. So that's my 2 cents on it anyway. Now, before I continue, I want to take a quick second here to give a much needed shout out to my man, Mr. Jason Reeves from Jaybird Digital Arts. We're going to hear from him in just a second, as I like to play his little ad that he did up for me. But I really want to just take a second to truly stress, because I haven't said this in a while on the show as I've been using this spot he did for me, instead of kind of giving my personal kind of recommendation for Jason. I cannot stress enough how much Jason has done for this show and as well for the Podbean Network and the other podcasts that I do. Without Jason, I do truly believe that I would not be doing this podcast anymore, and that the podcast and the network and basically everything I do would be to the level of quality it is, because what Jason brings to the table is a certain level of, number one, expertise that I truly always appreciate. I love bouncing ideas off him for anything, but then also it is a quality of product. You know, I get a lot of compliments on my logos and my banners and any of my social media stuff. He does literally all of it. Aside from the memes, that's me. Or, you know, last week, that kind of crappy picture I did, that was me. You know, but if there's something on my social media that is professional looking and it's done, I assure you it was Jason. You know, he's done stuff for me, Podbeard Network, 2 Guys in a Game, Mics and Beers, ton of other stuff. You know, he's done logos for a few bands I know, some album covers, t-shirt designs, phone manipulation. He's cleaned up photos for me before. He just does everything. So I cannot stress enough that you guys should really take a second to go to his website, jaybirdddigitalarts.com. Check him out. If you need anything all like that, he got you covered. And I guarantee that you're going to love it and that you will love even more the price that he's going to give you. A great dude, and we're going to hear from him right now.
It's your guy, Jaybird here from Jaybird Digital Arts, reminding you to tune in to the Hodder Show podcast. Hell, tune into all of the Podbeard Network shows, and not just because they support Jaybird, but because they're good. And I'll give you a discount on design work if you do. Beat that deal, I dare ya.
All right, so we're back at it here, and this next story is from Reddit user, I'm going to probably butcher this, feeling_PSILY, whatever the hell that means, Pizzly, PS I love you, feeling_PS I love you, maybe, perhaps, we're going to go with that. And this one, another quick short one, definitely not a very creepy one, or kind of creepy, but kind of like a nice creepy, you know, like the spirit wanted this person to have a nice experience. So that's what happened. And this one is, I've had this kind of shit happen to me before too. So I totally relate to it really hard. Growing up, my older brother had a computer program that he used to compose piano music. I remember I was reading in the living room when I heard the most beautiful violin melody I ever heard. I listened to the whole thing, which was several minutes long. I walked down the hallway to compliment my brother on his masterpiece, when I realized my brother was not using the computer, and I was home alone. So, when you are alone, and all of a sudden music plays, it is a very unnerving experience. I have been there. Again, this was at the store, and basically the radio turned on once. Actually, more than once the radio turned on, but the one time I was in the back of the store when we were doing renovations. I've told the story a bunch of times before, so I'm just going to run through it really, really quick because it kind of pertains to this. I was in the very back of the store, and there was a tarp separating the main, like me from the main part of the storefront, because we were doing some renovations and there was drywall dust and stuff. So I'm chilling, doing my own thing, and all of a sudden, the freaking radio just starts blaring full blast, like it's gonna blow the speakers. And my boss, I thought, was out front cranking a song, so I'm like, "Oh, you like the song, eh?" No response. And I'm like, okay, like, what the hell? Someone just turned the radio up. So I'm like, oh my God, someone's out there. So I run around to the front of the store out the back door, and I meet my boss. He's in the alleyway having a smoke. And I'm like, dude, someone is in the front of the store. So we run in, and there's no one there. And the kicker of this whole damn thing is there's fresh drywall dust on the actual floor. So like you could see the footprints. And there were no footprints even anywhere near the radio. So, definitely very interesting. So, that's my story. Now, getting back to the story. These next ones are definitely more freaky and scary. And a couple of them, I'm sure are going to freak me the hell out. So it's pretty interesting. And this next one, it's not a ghost story, but it was such an interesting thing. And there was quite a few comments on it of people having a similar experience where it just hit me. And it's something I kind of do want to dissect a bit. That's why I want to read it. And this story is from Eat Electricity. A friend of mine told me about a dream she had years ago about a decrepit old man who was being chased by wolves. In the dream, he kept referring to himself in the third person as Old Skin. Old Skin's got to get away from the wolves. Eventually, the wolves caught up to him and started ripping him to pieces in front of her. And he kept narrating the voices in a monotone voice. Old Skin's being eaten alive. Old Skin's gonna die. She woke up, feeling creeped out. But the weirdest part came when she started describing the dream to her brother. He stopped her mid-sentence and asked, "Was his name Old Skin? I had the exact same dream." I don't know if that's paranormal, but it's fucking creepy. So I thought that was a really interesting story. And the reason why I think it pertains to this is I am a firm believer that spirits can indeed affect you in your sleep. So with that in mind, what exactly was the deal here? I have had tales told to me before of siblings or people who live together having the exact same kind of freaky dream. So that really kind of freaked me the hell out when I read that, because I know that has happened before, because I've heard of it happening. And I think that it's just super, super interesting. And the reason why I kind of wanted to dissect it was because when I was told about this from someone, they were like, man, we had this really messed up dream. And it was something kind of similar. They were just watching something extremely violent happen to somebody. And, when someone had something like that happen to them, they can spend the remaining of eternity, some unfortunately, trying to find peace for what happened to them. So do I think this, Old Skin guy was a person who maybe unfortunately this happened to him? It very well could have been. And he just wanted to tell his story to somebody, to anyone who would listen. So that's what I think of that. Now, this next one I have here is, it's a little bit longer. So I'm going to jump into this here. This one is from Reddit user MADRAMP Ager. So Madram Pager. I just want to make sure I get the names as close as I can. I used to be in the military, and the training camp bunk that we lived in was said to be haunted. Occasionally, our stuff would go missing and reappear in weird places, like under our bed or inside a bag that we had zipped up and stuff. No big deal, right? I mean, human error and all. Then came the instance that freaked everyone out. It was one night after lights out, and my friend was on his phone texting his girlfriend. Most of us were drifting off to sleep when we were lying on our beds. Suddenly, he heard the shuffling of feet from the corridor. So thinking that it was our sergeant, he quickly hid his phone under his pillow, rolled over onto his side, and pretended to sleep. Till this day, what happens next chills me to the bone. While he pretended to sleep, he heard someone right behind him, at the other side of his bed, going, "Don't worry, you can continue to pretend to sleep." I would dismiss this as a figment of his imagination, except about 5 other people around him heard it as well, including me. Creepier still, there was no one there, and it was the voice of a little girl who said it. For reference, our training camp was in the middle of an island and was set up away from the main admin blocks. The island had been closed by the government for army training purposes for the past 15 years. There were definitely no civilians around, let alone kids. To make matters freakier, when we came back from our weekend home leave, there was a bunch of female hair on his bed, neatly bundled up, long and jet black. Under his pillow was a note. "Remember me?" Now, as I said, we are in the middle of a forest, in the middle of an island. And at that point, in no time, there were no female recruits or personnel on the island. Our bunks were locked up for the weekend, and the duty sergeant had no idea that the incident had happened. We never spoke about it after that night. Still chills me to the bone to think about it. So, that one's definitely a lot more creepier. But I would like to read this just a little bit because he kind of has some edits here. He says, and I quote, "Yes, guys, I am from Singapore. And as those of you who are from there would know, until recently, army camps in Singapore did not allow handphones with cameras, so no pictures. Also, for those of you who say it may be a prank, yes, it very well may have been, but if it were, it'd be one heck of an amazing prank, as I was really fooled badly. The complexity of the prank would have been crazy, and I applaud anyone that was able to pull that off. That being said, many Singapore guys will tell you that the camp is a place where a lot of paranormal stuff happens. Most guys that have been through that camp have either experienced something firsthand or know someone who has." And then basically, he talks about how, like, if he fabricated it, why it isn't, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Fabrication, I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. There's a certain level of a story you can't make up. And the wording that they use, "don't worry, you can continue to pretend to sleep." I don't know, that line really got me. And the way that he explained the hair, the pillow, the barracks being locked up and all that, I don't know. I don't personally see it. You know, I really, really don't see it. So I think that it is true. And it's freaky. I'm not going to lie to you like that. It's setting a chill down my body thinking about it. So it is what it is. And this is what I said earlier, how, like, I'm probably going to freak myself out. I'm pretty much in it now. So you guys can probably hear in my voice. I'm like, okay, Jesus. All right, we're in it now, folks. We're in it now. So this next story I have here for you guys is, it's an interesting one. So that's why I threw it in. But, you know, I'll read you the story and then I'll go from there. So this story is from Reddit user Armantis. Armantes. 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 I'll go with Armantes. Middle of the night. Sleeping. I hear a sound like someone is taking a paperclip from my desk and throwing it against the wall, and it bounces across the desk. I wake up to the noise, turn on the light ray by my bed as I sit up. I look over and see nothing. Weird. As I'm ready to lay back down, my 20-pound steel Gumball Machine falls from the shelf over my bed, directly onto my pillow where my head was, not 30 seconds earlier. I flip out and scramble out of bed as I'm totally taken by surprise. As I stand up, I feel something under my feet. A paperclip. I put the murderous Gumball Machine on the floor, the paper bit clip back on my desk, and crawl into the safety of my comforter like nothing happened. So, murderous Gumball Machine. I lost it there for a second on that one. Things happen in life, you know. I would like to know why this person's parents thought it was a good idea to put a 20-pound Gumball Machine above their kid's bed where they sleep. That seems a little silly. I don't know. I don't think this is necessarily a haunting story or a ghost was trying to kill him with a gumball machine or anything. I think that's a little silly. But do I believe that perhaps some spirit from his past, maybe an old relative or something, knew this was going to happen and did the paperclip thing to save his life? Quite possible. Let's go with that for the sake of this podcast. So, I think the story's true. He has a edit talking about basically how, you know, he's like, well, he would have for sure died if it hit him. Some people in the comments were like, that wouldn't have killed you, dude. And it's like, you know, he was 10 years old. And if a 20-pound Gumball Machine falls on your face when you're 10 years old, it's probably going to kill you. Let's just be honest. So take that how you will. I personally am taking it as maybe perhaps a kind spirit saved his life in the only way they could think of, throwing a damn paperclip. So there you go. I've had guitar picks thrown at me, so, you know, I do believe it can happen. So we're rounding down here. I got 2 more stories for you, and they're both definitely creepy. So this story is from Dog Glass. Reddit user Dog Glass. When I was about 16 years old, I encountered something that still bugs me to this day. I woke up around 6 a.m. on a normal weekday and went downstairs to get ready for school. No one else in my family had woken up at that point. I got in the shower, still sleepy, could barely hold my eyes open. A few minutes of showering, someone tried to get it. And I told whoever it was that I was in the shower. The person then proceeded to aggressively open the door. I saw the door handle going crazy, up and down like crazy. He, she, whatever, knocked on the door harder and harder. Then suddenly, it stopped. Didn't think much about it. But when I got out of the shower, I realized that nobody was up yet. I proceeded with eating breakfast. And after a while, my dad came downstairs. So I asked him if it was he who had wanted to use the bathroom earlier. He said no, and that both my mom and younger brother were still asleep. So it couldn't have been them. Even if it had been a family member, they would not have tried to open the door so aggressively at 6 in the morning. So, opening the door aggressively, 6 in the morning, I mean, it's a good story. It's a creepy story. Why would a spirits have to go to the bathroom? They don't shower. I would be curious if this person had any other encounters like this in their home. Could have been a poltergeist, or could have been a spirit in their home that just was causing mischief and trouble. I had something somewhat similar happen to me once before, where a door would open and close on its own, and there was no vents around or anything. So, can happen, but definitely a good story, definitely a creepy story. To be in that situation, I would lose my damn mind. That's like one of my biggest fears, is being in the damn shower and something happening. Like, that's like my biggest fear in life. I don't know why. It's like, hey man, I'm just trying to shower here, dog. Come on, man. Get out of here. Haunt me when I'm like sitting at the dinner table. For God's sakes. Come on. I got shit to do. Gotta go to work. So the last story I have here for you guys is from the best name that I have on this here. Reddit user Kim Jong Funk, who is a funky monkey baby. That was the worst Dusty Rhodes impression imaginable. Let me try that again. The funky monkey baby. I can't do a lisp. I apologize. That was terrible. But trying to break up the creepiness with a lame joke. But this story is, I think it's the creepiest one. I think it's the best one. That's why it was saved for last. And I do believe it's true. Because, I mean, just listen to the story. When I was in elementary school, I shared a queen-size bed with my older sister and our family dog, a mutt that looked like a short-haired lassie, would sleep at the foot of our bed every night. When I was about 6 years old, I woke up one night around midnight and saw a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed. The figure was entirely in black, without any eyes or face. I tried to wake up my sister, but she rolled over to go back to sleep. My sister must have accidentally kicked the dog because the dog woke up and raised her head, started growling at the figure at the foot of the bed. The growling then woke my sister up, and she saw the figure and started screaming. When my parents came into the room and the light turned on, there was nothing there. To this day, both my sister and I are adamant that we saw a ghost or other demon in our room. And we know we aren't crazy because the dog saw it too. There's one thing that I know in life, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends, is that animals know. Animals know when there are spirits around. Animals know if something is going to happen. I don't know how I can explain it otherwise. They just know something's going to happen. They know if there are spirits around, whether good or bad. And what was that? The foot of their bed. I don't know. Again, I would love to know if this person had more encounters like this, because a one-time thing seems weird. You know, it was around the witching hour. So, you know, could have been maybe a witch out to get you. No, that's lame. But I don't know. You know, if it was just the one girl who saw it, you know, it could have been a sleep paralysis situation. That can happen. You see dark figures, all that wonderful, fun stuff. That is just wonderful, I'm sure. What is it? A demon? I don't think so. I don't get too far with that when it comes to like demons and stuff. That's when I'm kind of like, okay, I don't know. Do they exist? I'm sure they do. Well, I shouldn't say I'm sure I do. Maybe they do. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that because that's not what we're talking about here today. Was it a aggressive spirit trying to get them out of their house? Quite possible, my friends. Quite possible. But that's what I think anyway. I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to say about this. If you guys enjoyed these stories that I presented to you, if you thought they were lame, if you have any thoughts on any of the stories, please hit me up. Let me know. I always love to chat with you guys. This whole podcast came about from you guys interacting with me. I think that's something I'm going to try and do more. Doing polls like that, you know, just saying, hey guys, like I got a couple ideas for the podcast, this or this, what do you guys think? And if you guys enjoy that, I can do that more because it's something that I really truly believe I should be doing more as far as interacting with you guys as much as possible. And not just with, you know, doing interviews and asking you questions for Q&As, but stuff like that where like, you know, I can, you know, get either advice from you guys on what I should talk about, or if I'm stuck between a topic, things like that, you know, hit me up because I always love to hear from you guys about that kind of stuff. And if maybe you have a story you want me to share with the people who listen to this podcast, hit me up and send me the story and I will share it. either on the next kind of ghost story paranormal episode I do, which probably won't be this late at night again, because I'm probably not going to sleep now because I'm a big pansy, as I said earlier. But I mean, no, I feel pretty good. I'll be fine. But I may even potentially share on the next episode if it's just kind of a short story that you want me to share. But either way, hit me up. Hit me up. Regardless of how you listen to this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on the SoundCloud or the YouTube or Spotify or Stitcher, CastBox, however you're listening, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave a like, leave a comment if you can. I do seriously appreciate it. The more that you guys subscribe and leave ratings and comments, the more it helps me and helps this show. I just had this conversation with someone today where they were like, hey, like, how's the podcast going? And, coming into a new year is always tricky. I always find that the show kind of takes a bit of a slump, if you will, which is fine. That's cool. I'm not doing this because I want to get views and plays and all that kind of shit. I don't really care about that, if I'm being honest. Obviously, it's cool when it happens, but I'm doing this because it's fun for me. And I want to entertain people. Even if I entertain one person, I will feel like I have done my job. But if I have done my job and you enjoyed it, the more that you help me out and, share the podcast. If you enjoyed this and you're like, oh man, like, you guys check this out, please share it, whether it's on the Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Follow me at The Hodder Show, and share it with all your friends. Be like, oh, you guys can check out this podcast. He talks about, he shares some ghost stories and they're great. Or, I got lots of other great content. There's been over 200 episodes of this podcast. So there's a lot of killer content back there with some great guests. I do a lot of music stuff as well. So if you're into that, I got something for you. But if you're into the paranormal stuff like this, I don't do it every week, obviously. But I do dabble in it, once in a blue moon. Because I do like to scare myself once in a while, just keep me on my toes. I do conspiracy stuff once in a while too. I find that fun. Relationship stuff. Don't get me wrong, the interviews and the music stuff is my bread and butter. But I like doing this kind of one-off stuff once in a while as well. But I think with all that, I think we're gonna call it a night here. We're gonna pull the pin on her, and I'm gonna go to bed because I've been up since like freaking 6 a.m. So I'm pretty damn tired as of right now. It's like 1 a.m. So it's probably time for me to pull the pin and put a fork in her, hit the old space bar and end this episode off. But again, please, I strongly implore you, if you enjoyed this episode, to hit that subscribe button, especially if you're listening on YouTube. I am, as I always say on these kind of audio only episodes, I am going to do video content more. It's just something that is going to be kind of a hit or miss. Something like this, I'm not going to do a video of me sitting here talking because that's lame, I think. I don't think anyone wants to sit here and watch me talk because I'm not going to look at the camera and talk the whole time. Especially if I'm reading something. I don't know. I think that's lame. But if you guys are like, you know what, we might like to see that, then what the hell? Maybe I'll do it. These kind of episodes, I do tend to stop a lot just to kind of get my bearings and stuff. So maybe I do like an unedited thing. That could be kind of cool. Or if you think that's dumb, let me know. I want to get more interaction going. I really feel like what separates, the not so great podcasts and the great podcasts is the interaction with the listeners. And, I do always enjoy talking with you guys. So hit me up anytime. Social media, thehoddershow@gmail.com. And I will respond to you. Even if you send me hate, I will respond to you with love. Because I love you for tuning in. Thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week. Have a kick-ass freaking day, kick-ass hour, whatever you're doing. Do it with pride and with love. And remember, if there's anything you can do in your day, whether it's, holding the door open for somebody, reaching out to somebody who may be going through a little hard time, or, you see someone struggling to carry groceries to their car, give them a hand. If there's something you can do to make someone else's day a little brighter, you should do it. because you owe it to the world to do good as much as you can. At least I think so. You do good, you pass it around, the world's a much better place. And with that, I'm going to sign off, and I'll catch you next time on The Hodder Show.